And Tom is an 11-year Toastmaster member. I haven't done anything for 11 years except for eat and sleep, but that's pretty good. He has been a member of the National Speakers Association. Tom is also a 3-time District 45 Table Topics champion, hence why we invited him to our club. He is also the current reigning District 45, that's our group, Table Topics champ. Great, fantastic. So I'd like to welcome Tom Dowd to the lectern.
We usually put in the introduction, I am selling books for anyone interested. They're $5 a piece. It covers the cost of my gas coming down from Canada. Or 5 for $20. In school, when you were given an essay, a 500-word essay, what did you do? You started at the top and you kept writing and writing and writing until you got to word number 500 and you stopped. And we do that right now with table topics. When you're given a minute to 2 to speak, you wait until you see that green and you say, hallelujah, and you stop. And what we typically do is when you're writing that essay is you're writing and you're writing and you're writing. Well, where's the introduction? Your introduction in your head is the first paragraph you wrote, but the reality is that's not your introduction. So when we talk about methods, the one that you should probably think about the most is what I call message first, story later. Think of it in terms of this blank piece of paper. And when you're given the question, the first thought in your head isn't, what story do I have that matches up to that exact question? It should be, what do I want the audience to walk away with? What is my message? What is my moral? And then you can support it with stories. And then you can think about what you want your introduction to be and what you want your conclusion to be. Instead of starting from the top and going all the way to the bottom, take a step back. And our minds are magical, that they can do this very quickly in your head. And message first, story later. In a job interview, what if you were asked if you could be any type of tree in the world, what would it be and why? Or how about, on a scale of 1 to 10, how weird are you and why? What if you're in the middle of a meeting at work and you're kind of just dozing off and they say, Tom, what's your opinion? What if your 14-year-old tells you she wants to start dating? If your jaw is on the ground and your mind is a jumbled mess and the words that come from your mouth, this session is for you. We are engaged in unprepared conversations on a daily basis. When I was 14 years old, I was a caddy at a golf club and I never got any jobs out on the course. So here I was in the caddy shack and some guy walks by and he says, what's up? It's the first time I ever heard that question asked so casually, and yes, I'm dating myself. In fact, to this day, I don't think I ever answered him. My response, by the way, is not mine. But our minds stop and freeze, or they go to the other side of that, and they give the first thing that pops into our mind. And we selfishly think in terms of blah. But why did I say selfishly? So I'm going to have an exercise for you. Feel free to shout out the first one-word answer that comes to mind. If you could travel anywhere in the world, where would it be?
New Zealand. Alaska.
Aruba.
I'm not going to keep going until you answer.
Serengeti.
Why did I say selfishly? Because it's where we want to go. It's us. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. But now you have to answer, now what? And one way to answer now what is to have your mind run through who, what, where, why, when, and how. 5 W's plus H. You don't have to answer every single one of those verbally, but you should answer those mentally. And it gives you a checklist to walk through. Same thing when you write an article. Headline first, you selfishly gave your headline, Hawaii, whatever it was, And then now you have to fill in the blanks with who, what, where, why, when, and how. So let's stick with this travel example. Whom might you go with? Just shout it out.
Wife.
Girlfriend.
Okay. What might you do when you're there?
Beach.
Photograph.
Okay. Where would you go?
The mountains.
Mountains.
Mountains. Yeah.
Okay.
Hiking.
The headline was
Water.
Hawaii. Now is our time to fill in the blanks with mountains, beach, museums, whatever it might be. Where would you go? Who, what, where, why would you go? This is cold in Maine.
Right. I want to make her happy.
And when would you go?
Right. In the cold.
Anytime.
Anytime.
Anytime. And how would you get there?
Yeah.
How?
Travel.
Air? Cruise, boat.
Nice.
And I always ask this question, I always get boat and plane. But who says you can't paddle across? You have to think in terms of outside the box. You can have a little bit of fun with this and say, I'm going to paddle across. Is it going to take you a while? But is there a right or a wrong answer to this question? That should give you a lot of confidence to not worry about being wrong, because you can't be. You can have a little bit of fun and start thinking creatively. I'm going to share another method with you. It's called the PREP method. P-R-E-P, PREP. Point, reason, example, point. So let me give you an example. Point. For anyone looking to improve their communication skills or leadership skills should join Toastmasters International. Point. Reason. I grew up painfully shy and introverted, and I was told for 18 years of my performance appraisals I couldn't communicate. Reason. Example. Less than 3 months after I joined Toastmasters, my boss said that Tom's communication skills were his key strengths, and my confidence went through the roof. Point. For anyone looking to improve their communication skills or leadership skills should join Toastmasters. It's in a nice little package when you think of it that way. We talk a lot about the message and the stories and where they all fit in, so we can't forget these stories that we have. And the question that you need to ask yourself before you put that story out there on the table is, why should the audience care about your story? What's in it for them? And our conversation responses become these stories that should resonate with the audience. And we all have stories to share. But how many times have you sat down and told the same stories at Thanksgiving? Or you're sitting there at the dinner table sharing. Or you're at a water cooler sharing stories. We all have these stories that we can pick out of our back pocket and use them. And when you think to reach back to those back pockets, you don't have to create anything brand new. Again, it should give you confidence that you do have stories to share. Feel free to shout out your first one-word answer that comes to mind. What is your favorite color?
Green.
Pink.
We've got a silent crew over here. What's your favorite food?
Sushi.
Pizza.
Ice cream.
Nachos.
Remember those answers. I'm looking for a volunteer. Come on. What's your favorite color?
Green.
What's your favorite food?
Spaghetti.
If every time you entered a room, what would be your theme song and why?
My Way, Frank Sinatra, because I love Frank Sinatra.
Thank you. Your why is because you like Frank Sinatra. What is the point of this exercise? I don't know. It's to tell us that our minds sometimes are predisposed to get into this checklist mentality, to get into this pattern, this rhythm. And comedians do this all the time. They know that the audience is thinking along these lines, so they put one point out there, another similar point, and then they throw a curveball for the third point. And we, as answerers, responders of these questions, we think like that audience and we try to fit the pattern, and that's when we often lose it because we're unsure. What this lesson should be telling you is listen very carefully to what the question is really trying to answer. If there's no right or wrong answer, it should give you confidence, again, to be able to move down this different path. But you have to teach your mind to stop that checklist mentality and really, truly, genuinely listen to what is trying to what you want to answer. Because if there is no right or wrong answer, you can confidently then roll. There's another piece when it comes to our stories is that as we're doing it, again, we selfishly usually throw out our story. How is it going to resonate with the audience? But you need to also be memorable. I was teaching interviewing skills to a bunch of high schoolers, and I go around and I ask the tree question. I got the typical maple, oak, birch responses. And then I got to the person I perceived to be the troublemaker. And he stood up and he said, I'd be a cactus. Now, is cactus a real tree? I have no idea. He said, because I'm prickly. No one knows me. But every once in a while, little animals start to burrow in and feed off of me. And I'll feed off of them. I wish more people would get to know me. And then he sat down. Besides lessons in rash judgments, there are lessons about being memorable, emotionally connecting with the audience so they can walk away with something. In my very first Table Topics contest, I finished in 3rd place out of 3 people at the club level. The next year I competed in both international and Table Topics, and I was having some good fortune in international. At my club level, no one competed, so I moved on. At the area level, there were only 2 of us, and we both moved on. So here I was at the division level, not knowing if I should be there or not. I had just given my international speech, and I got the Table Topics question after. And they said, if you were given $750,000, how would you split it 3 ways equally? And out of the corner of my eye, I saw my 3 young daughters. And thus started the freight train that turned into a train wreck. I gave some answer about their college tuition trying to be funny. The organizer came up to me after and said, Tom, it was nice of you to throw the Table Topics contest knowing you were moving on for the other one. And I didn't throw the contest, but I did blow the contest. And there's some lessons in there. And the first is I was trying to be funny, and I'm not, just ask my wife. But there's another lesson in there that I wasn't being myself. But that's the other lesson. It's not about me. It's about the audience. What was the audience going to take away from my answer about college tuition about my 3 daughters? How was that going to resonate with them? And in today's day and age, with the scandals going on, it might have resonated a little bit better than 10 years ago. But the audience didn't really have anything to grasp hold of. And the organizer went on to say, Tom, it was interesting how you had just given a speech on cystic fibrosis. And last year, didn't you give a speech on animal rescue? And you and I, before the contest, had a conversation about the Japan tsunami. All the answers were in the palm of my hands. They were in my back pocket. I overthought the question. And that's what we do often. We overthink it. I could have had rhetorical questions. I could have had motivational questions for the audience relating to care and giving, community that relate to most, if not everyone in the audience. In Toastmasters, we're taught strong introductions supported with 2 or 3 stories and wrap it up with a nice bow. My nice bow was already there, and I chose not to look at it. But we keep talking about these stories and how they resonate. But the question is, we still need to get back to the message. And if you're not sure what the message is, there's a way to get there, and that's through pros and cons. So let's use cell phones as an example. What are some pros of cell phones?
Immediate communication.
Immediate, absolutely. Convenience.
Wi-Fi information.
Information at your fingertips. What are some of the cons?
People getting in touch with you all day long.
Yeah, you're attached at the hip to everybody.
Distraction.
Yeah,
Distraction, absolutely.
Sometimes they don't work when you need them.
Okay.
Expensive.
Impedes communication sometimes.
Yes.
I'm sorry, what was that?
It impedes communication.
It does impede communication. All right, so now we know what the messages are. Impeding communication, fingertip information, hard to be in the present sometimes is some of the cons. Does anyone have a story about cell phones with some of those messages somewhere along the line? Yeah, go ahead.
I do.
Go ahead.
Right
Tell a
here.
quick story.
So, when I first started working in construction, I had a flip phone, and I always envied the people that had these Blackberries, right? They were really cool, and it was a status symbol to have a really good phone. And I had worked at this company for a couple of years, and I was at the office, and I was getting a Blackberry. And I was so jacked as they were setting it up for me, and I had it, it was shiny, and it was in my coat. I got in my truck, and I drove like just a mile down the road, came to the first light, and bing, I got a text. And then all of a sudden, bing, I got an email. And then the phone started ringing. And I said, oh my God, I'm in trouble because now there's 3 ways that people are going to get in touch with me. This is going to be hard. And that's my story of cell phones.